You're listening to Something in the Wilderness. If you're a first-time listener, thank you so much for giving it a shot. If you're a regular, welcome back, and thank you too for being a part of this. Each week, I pick one song from Andrew McMahon's catalog, and I talk about the facts, my thoughts, and my feelings about it. Sometimes I have a guest, but today, I'm rolling solo, much like Andrew in the song I'm going to discuss. My name's Steve, and I want to talk about another song that is near and dear to my heart. Sometimes it shocks me how much Andrew's lyrics speak to me. So we're probably all guilty at some point in our lives of taking all we have for granted. It's helpful sometimes to slow down, reflect on what we have, allow ourselves to be grateful, and then sometimes take action on that feeling as well. I know I get so busy and consumed in the day-to-day that I get these blinders on sometimes, which makes it hard to see what I have around me. I also tend to get really excited and hyper-focused about occasions and events that are rare in my life. I plan, and when these times come, I never want them to end. Things like group camping trips, parties, and other special occasions. This usually causes me to go overboard at the actual event. My head gets so wrapped up in never wanting these fun times to end. Maybe I drink too much, eat too much, stay up too late, but more importantly, I lose sight of all the things I have waiting for me in my day-to-day life. Really, my life is so fortunate, and I have so much that others would just kill for. Yet here I am sometimes doing things that could put what I have in jeopardy. Fortunately, I have a good girl and two beautiful yellow-haired daughters to bring me back to earth on these occasions. Though it's not my birthday, and I don't think Andrew was talking about his either, let's dig into this very personal birthday song. The band is Andrew McMahon and the Wilderness. Birthday song was track 11 on Zombies on Broadway. Though technically it's the 10th song, track 1's an intro track that doesn't even have a song on it. The album was released on February 10th, 2017. This song was a solo song written by Andrew McMahon at the end of his time in New York City, wrapping up the Zombies on Broadway sessions. In fact, this was only one of 2 songs on the entire album written solely by Andrew. The rest were co-writes. This song was recorded at Arcade Studios in New York City and produced by Greg Wattenberg and Derek Furtman, the duo that produced the majority of the album. The track was mixed by John Sinclair. Andrew performs the accordion and piano on this track as well as the vocals. Other players include Bobby Raw Anderson on guitar, Wattenberg on bass, Wattenberg and Furman on guitars and programming, and Gunnar Olsen on the drums. Way back in the early Jack's Mannequin era, Andrew had been thinking about making an album in New York City. He had made a West Coast themed album with everything in transit, so why not make an East Coast themed one? Those plans fell through when he was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia right there in a hospital in the Big Apple. So instead, he stayed in California for his treatment and recovery, and then wrote and recorded what would become The Glass Passenger. I've heard Andrew talk about his complicated feelings with New York City due to the negative memories he has there. Fortunately, he eventually brought himself to make good on his original idea 10 years later to write and record an album there. This would become Zombies on Broadway. According to Andrew, at times, the city did get the best of him, spending time out at the bars until the early hours of the morning, looking for inspiration and excitement in the city that never sleeps. He actually felt like he needed a break after the process. In an alt press article from 2017, the interviewer asked Andrew what new perspective he brought with him after his time in New York. Andrew responded, "I've had a relationship with the lifestyle that has ebbed and flowed as far as my capacity for the late night, and I was under the impression that I had it fairly well under control. And it spun out pretty hard on me toward the end of this album, and toward the end of the touring on this cycle. I had to take ownership of that, and come back and pull that side of my life in check. Luckily, I was able to. I was in a position to get my hands around it and move forward. But that was a big realization for me, that I'm not invincible, try as I may over all these years to prove otherwise." According to Setlist FM, Birthday Song's been played live 24 times. Now, I didn't catch a show in the official Zombies on Broadway tour that year, but I did see a festival performance a year later, so understandably I didn't get to hear the song in concert because they pretty much stuck to high-energy songs and hits at the 2018 Bunbury Festival. For the tone of this song and considering the mixed crowd you get at a festival, I don't think this song would have been appropriate there anyway. The last time the song's been performed live in any capacity was in April 2020 on Andrew's Instagram live stream. Like a lot of those songs, I felt like it pumped new life into the song. He almost didn't play it, though. I remember watching this from my couch, wondering which song he'd play next. He had to take a few tries at it before he figured out how to play it again. I understand he has a lot of songs, so he can't recall them all with a moment's notice, which is why I assume that most touring musicians have a set list they pretty much stick to in concert. I did like the humility there, though, just trying to keep it real and figure out the song again. Lucky for us, he got it right, and once he started playing, it all came back to him. By the way, if anyone else wants to learn to play this song, there's a guy who posted a tutorial on YouTube on how to play it. I'll link both that and Andrew's Instagram live video in the show notes. So let's talk about the song itself now. Apparently, Andrew woke up one morning in New York City toward the end of his time there, and he felt inspired to write this song suddenly. He called his manager and said he needed a piano immediately. Once he got it, he wrote the song while looking out his apartment window into the city. It was the last song he wrote for the album. But it's hard for me to imagine that call, though. Bring me a piano. Is that easy to do? In New York City especially? Up to an apartment? I mean, I could see if it was a guitar, but a piano seems like a pretty tall order. Maybe it was a keyboard. I did find some footage from a New York City concert where he tells the story, and the way he tells it there is that he asked for a keyboard, and they brought him a piano. But it does seem like he kind of uses the two words interchangeably in the story. I'll link that video in the show notes as well. I don't know. Maybe they had a piano close by at the studio down the street, and he wanted it in his apartment that day. Or maybe they rented one and delivered it to him. Maybe it was just a keyboard. I think I'm going to add that one to the running list of questions to ask Andrew if I ever do meet him. Did you really have a piano brought to your New York City apartment to write Birthday Song? Can you tell me how that phone call went? I don't know. Maybe it's more normal than I think in a musician's world. So I took this quote from AndrewMcMahon.com when he announced the release of the Zombies on Broadway album in 2017. I wrote this album in the middle of a whirlwind, when the future was unclear. Isn't it always? I found my way to the city thinking I could settle a score with a ghost. You can't, so I came home and rewrote the ending. I spent more than a year hoping to find new answers to old questions. What I found? I've always been two people, one in search of peace, and the other in search of whatever makes my hair stand up and my heart beat faster. This record's mostly about the latter. I really like that last piece, and I think most of us can identify with that sentiment. In a sense, don't we all want a normal, predictable, peaceful life, but also crave that excitement to keep us interested? I love how Andrew takes us on this journey through the album, the thrill of all the world has to offer outside, staying out late, spending time with friends, meeting all these new characters, but eventually starting to wonder if it's all worth it. At the sacrifice of time lost with his family, with what could be a normal, predictable, peaceful life. By the end of the album, he's given us this reflective piece on the journey called Birthday Song, still wondering whether it was all worth it, but letting us know what's truly important to him and what he needs to do now. Go home and be with his family. I do think as fans or just outsiders to the music industry, it's really easy for us to forget that these people are human beings too. Looking at them up on stage, dancing, singing, partying, maybe seeing the houses they live in, the cars they drive, the privileges they have with their money and their career. But at the core, they still have human problems. And one of those is this work-family balance. Sure, some of them live this wild rock star lifestyle at times, but eventually they have to return home to a somewhat normal life anyway, whether that includes a family or paying their bills or just figuring out how to continue their career with writing songs, recording albums, and planning the next tour. I want to talk a little bit about the sound of the song now. This song does have a distinctly different sound than the rest of the album. But at least for me, the final track was a welcome change of style, especially on my first listen. Zombies on Broadway is easily Andrew's most pop and electronic-inspired album to the present day. Most of the songs are danceable and would be more fitting at a club than the majority of his work. I have to admit, though, the majority of the album was hard for me to digest on the first listen, but I'm glad I stuck with it. What can I say? I'm a ride or die fan at this point. But I do have a much different opinion and a deep respect for the album nowadays. I won't say that Birthday Song is my favorite song on the album, but it is the most Andrew-like song on the album to me, and I like that. The way he sings the melody in the song is pretty powerful. What I appreciate in the song, and others like it, is the room the music leaves to allow you to really appreciate the piano and the vocals. Whereas other times in the album, I feel like there's just so much going on with the instrumentation that, we don't get to feel it like we do in this song. This is also the longest track on the album, and looking back at all the songs by Andrew McMahon in the Wilderness, it's technically the longest track they have. The music in this one ends at just under 5 minutes. The only other Wilderness song that comes close to that is Teenage Rockstars, the opening track on Upside Down Flowers, which, if you're playing the second and third albums back to back, it's technically the next song in order. But as Birthday Song ends, we get an outro after the 5-minute mark. If you listen closely, and you wait for it, It sounds from the New York City subway. I hear Amazing Grace being played on a violin, and I hear a train coming in with an announcement of the L train, though I can't tell which stop they're saying. You may remember, though, that this album ends much like it begins. The intro to the first song on the album also features sounds from the subway, including a train passing by. A lot of times when I'm listening to my entire Something in the Wilderness mix, which is made up of every Andrew song on Spotify, I tend to look for patterns, and I was pleasantly surprised to discover that the most similar song in his catalog to this one is his latest track, New Year's Day. In fact, some of the lyrical themes are even similar, but mainly it's the music that feels connected between the two. Listen to them back to back and let me know what you think. But unlike New Year's Song, where I really do believe he's sending a message to somebody else, Birthday Song definitely feels like a message for himself. It's very personal to what's going on in his life at the time. We do get an ironic title with this song, since the first line of the chorus states, "It's not your birthday." I'm curious about his choice to call it Birthday Song, but I guess I get all the more intrigued to learn the story behind the words due to the title. The verses here are pretty literal, which I think makes them more powerful. He paints this picture of what his life looked like recently in the first verse. You can pick yourself up, you can start walking straight. Tonight you're the life of the party. When the bar lights come on at your paper parade, you don't have to chase down the moon, 'cause I'll leave the light on for you. He definitely sounds like he's talking to himself there. The second verse is much more specific to his career. I've really enjoyed these moments in Andrew's songs when he self-reflects on the state of his career. Again, it just makes him seem more human to me. You can play all the notes, you can write all the words, you headlined in all the big cities, but when the spotlights are off and the crowds have gone home, you could be going home too. He could be going home, but he hasn't been. Not lately. Instead, he's been living this wild lifestyle, but he knows what he should be doing. Andrew actually did return home to California to take a break from it all during the middle of the recording process. But then he eventually returned back to New York City to finish the album. Probably with a newfound perspective, I would think. And that's when he wrote this song. Both choruses start with, "It's not your birthday," and the first one tells us that it's not the 4th of July either, while the second chorus states that it's not Mardi Gras either. So what does this all mean? Well, why have I consistently been partying all night, destroying my body, sacrificing my health, and it's just an average day? If every night's like a birthday party or a holiday, then what is special anymore? Once Andrew stepped away from this all, he noticed that he had been heading down a path of self-destruction and potentially damaging his life as a family man, maybe even as a career musician. You can party hard sometimes and really celebrate those special occasions. I know I do sometimes. But I think Andrew realized that maybe he'd taken it too far this time. And I've done that too. He wasn't just celebrating the special occasions. He was living this constant party mindset. We've seen celebrities, and you may even know people in your own personal life who've entered this path, never to return. Andrew's fortunate to have a consistent career, solid friendships, and a loving family to return to when the party's over. But not everybody has those people, or realizes they do. Andrew knew when it was too much, because he had his family and his career to remind him, to slow him down, to bring him back to earth. "You've got a life in a spaceship to fly," he states in the chorus. He knows he has to make it back at all costs, picking up the pieces, getting his head straight, because he has jobs to do. Father, husband, and musician, just to name a few. My favorite lines of the whole song, by far, are also within the chorus. "You've got a woman and a beautiful yellow-haired daughter." And the first chorus becomes, "You've got a good job and a beautiful yellow-haired daughter" in the second. And finally, the most powerful one comes toward the end of the song. "You married a good girl. She gave you this beautiful yellow-haired daughter." I can't not think of my own family when I hear these lines, and how grateful I am for everything I have. It's incredible how a song can evoke such emotions, but I truly do feel it more when I hear these words from him. I'm very fortunate to have married a great woman who works hard at her own job, is a wonderful mother to our 2 perfect yellow-haired daughters, and then I have my own job that I'm very lucky to have as well. It allows us to live the way we do and make the memories that we have. Come back to earth, kid. Well, you know it's not an Andrew McMahon album without a space-related metaphor, right? Between this iconic line and the spaceship one mentioned earlier, he uses these lines to demonstrate how he feels toward his family. He has a spaceship to fly down here, and that's why he needs to return home from space, or this place that is obviously not his home. I'm sure we could all use this reminder sometimes when we allow our priorities to get out of order. Come back to earth, come back home, remember what's important. The last lines of the song are another high point for me. Right before we get the sounds of the New York City subway, "So blow out your candles, it's better than letting them burn out." It sounds to me like he's telling himself he needs to take control of his life now. The experience of writing and recording in New York and all those late nights that came with it have come to an end. Otherwise, he may just fade away and lose everything he has. So he needs to take the reins back by blowing out the candles instead of burning out. Some final thoughts here. This song's the perfect way to end the Zombies on Broadway album, in my opinion. Actually, Andrew does a really good job of putting the bow on an album with his final song. In this example, though, it's about reflecting back on the party, the excitement, all those great catchy songs that fill you full of adrenaline, and bringing us, the listeners, back to reality, back to where we belong, at home with our loved ones, appreciating the beauty and excitement of every day we have here with the people that are most important to us. The song is reflective about the time, but at times it's sad about what was missed, but mostly it's grateful. This song helps me remember that, though it's important to enjoy life to the fullest at the appropriate times, you just can't allow yourself to take it too far, at least not at the cost of the people and the things that are most important. Because these events and experiences, they're only short moments in time, occasions meant to be full of excitement. But mainly, it's your family, your close friends, and even your livelihood to take care of those people that you love. These things mean the most. Thinking of it from Andrew's perspective, it's understandable why a lot of touring musicians have to give up the party lifestyle eventually. Lately, it's been surprising to me learning how so many of my favorite musicians don't even drink alcohol anymore. But to be fair, most of the musicians I listen to, like Andrew, have been doing this for over 20 years. Most of us regular people wouldn't be able to handle living that way for so long and so often. So for Andrew, it seems to be finding that balance between the road life and his family life, and mainly not allowing his family and his livelihood to be sacrificed because of how he lives out on the road. It's about knowing his limits, or the limits of what he's able to do out there and still keep the life and the people he loves. Thanks for listening to me express my thoughts and feelings on Andrew McMahon's music. I love hearing from you guys, so thanks for commenting on Instagram and Facebook and reaching out directly. If you'd like to discuss a song with me on here, email somethinginthewilderness@gmail.com and we'll set something up. And those of you who just like to listen, that's great too. As Andrew stated in that Alt Press article I mentioned earlier, you have to figure out where home is and make sure you land there.